My husband is an elite department head. You're nothing like him, with only a middle school diploma. With a sneer on her face, Emily, my former childhood friend and classmate, taunted me. Then I guess he's fired. What? Even my former classmates were stunned by the words I had just spoken. My name is Kevin. I turned 30 this year. I've been married to my wife, Sarah, for 3 years now. Sarah is kind and gentle, and we have a wonderful marriage, living peacefully together. One day, as I was checking the mail at home, I found a fancy envelope. When I looked at the sender, it was from Emily, a middle school classmate I hadn't heard from in over 10 years. Inside the envelope was an invitation to our middle school reunion. Why now, after all this time? I was puzzled, but at the same time, the thought of seeing everyone again made me decide to attend. The day of the reunion arrived. Sarah helped me pick out a suit, and I headed to the venue. When I arrived, it was a standing buffet-style party, and everyone was already mingling freely. I exchanged greetings with a few people and was enjoying the food when Emily, who was organizing the reunion, approached me. "Oh, look at this dull group. Just a bunch of poor people." Emily sneered down at us, clearly mocking. I was never the type to stand out in class. "Kevin, it's been a while." I was worried, wondering what you were doing and where you were. Emily spoke to me with a mix of sarcasm and disdain. We had once been childhood friends, living close by. "I'm getting married soon, so I gathered everyone here today to share the news." "Oh, congratulations. My husband is an elite department head." "You're nothing like him, with only a middle school diploma." Emily sneered again. Her words stung, but not wanting to cause a scene, I sincerely congratulated her. Others around us also offered their congratulations. Emily, satisfied, continued talking. "I absolutely expect you all to attend my wedding. My husband is set to take over his family's company after the wedding, so there will be a lot of guests on his side. That's why I'd like you all, my middle school classmates, to attend as guests on my side." She handed out wedding invitations as she spoke. It was obvious she just wanted to show off, but no one dared to say anything and took the invitations. "You're coming, of course?" After all, we were childhood friends. Emily emphasized childhood friends in a deliberate way. Emily's mother and my mom were apparently good friends back in school. However, I lost my mother when I was in 3rd grade, and after that, I was raised by my father, who worked in a factory making machine parts. That's when everything changed. My father tried to drown his loneliness in alcohol and gambling after my mother passed away, and my life changed completely. We had to sell our house and move to a rundown apartment. Even when I started middle school, I couldn't afford a new uniform and had to make do with hand-me-downs from relatives. My father never attended a single school event, like open houses or graduation ceremonies. Because of that, my classmates started calling me poor and filthy, hurling cruel insults at me. Seeing this, Emily began to distance herself from me, and by middle school, she was leading the charge in bullying me. In the 3rd year of middle school. "Dad, about high school." I cautiously brought up the topic, only to be met with a furious outburst. "What are you talking about? There's no way I'm sending you to high school." "What?" I was taken aback and found myself at a loss for words. Even though I desperately tried to convince my father of my desire to continue my education, he stubbornly refused to change his mind. Soon, the news that I would be working right after middle school became a topic of discussion in class. Among those who mocked me was Emily, who was at the center of our class. "What? You're going to work after middle school?" Well, with only one parent, I guess you can't afford high school. How pitiful for someone as poor as you. When Emily said this, the other classmates snickered. I desperately wanted to change my situation. On the day I graduated from middle school, I quietly left home and took a train to the city by myself. I had no one to rely on, and I was filled with fear and anxiety. Since that day, I've rarely returned home, or even to my hometown. I kept in touch with a few close friends from time to time, but that was it. Later, I searched for work in the city, but with only a middle school diploma, very few places were willing to hire me. The only job I could find was at the cleaning company where I currently work. Given that I've always been a bit of a neat freak, this job seemed to suit me. I worked diligently, and a few years later, when I was 22, I met Sarah at my workplace. I was drawn to her beautiful smile and the respectful way she treated everyone, and then she surprised me by asking me out to dinner. We continued dating and eventually got married. When I decided to marry Sarah, I figured I should at least inform my father, so I gave him a call. But he sounded utterly uninterested. "Oh, someone actually wants to marry you? She must be pretty quirky." "Dad, that's not a very nice thing to say." "Well, as long as you don't involve me, do whatever you want." I had secretly hoped he might be a little happy that his only son was getting married, so I was pretty disheartened. But Sarah gently comforted me. "Kevin, I'm your family now, right? From now on, let's focus on building our happiness together." Her words touched me deeply, and I remember hugging her and shedding a few tears. Since then, I've tried to forget about my family and classmates, focusing instead on the life I've built. But suddenly, receiving an invitation to Emily's wedding, I decided to talk it over with Sarah when I got home. Maybe this is their way of trying to reconcile with you, Kevin. Maybe they've grown up and are rethinking things. You think so? I think you should go. Of course, I'll be there with you. All right. I'll attend, then. Thanks, Sarah. The next day, I marked attending on the invitation and sent it back. 3 months later, on the day of Emily's wedding, I put on my suit. Sarah had been wearing a dress since the morning, and her hair was beautifully styled. I couldn't help but be captivated by her. Together, we headed to the venue. The wedding was held at one of the largest and most well-known venues in the area. Well, considering she's marrying the president of Harrison Industries, it's no surprise the wedding is this grand. Yeah, I bet there are over 300 guests here. We chatted as we entered the chapel, waiting for the bride and groom to arrive. Emily walked down the aisle with her father, looking genuinely happy. Her father, too, had a proud look on his face. I clapped along with everyone else, but watching this scene made me feel a little envious and uneasy. My father hadn't attended my wedding, and sensing how I felt about it, Sarah had kindly suggested we have a small ceremony, just the two of us. After moving to the reception hall, we headed to the friends' table, where my old classmates were seated. Everyone seemed curious about Sarah, with some even asking about her educational background, amused by the situation. Sarah just laughed it off gracefully. I exchanged a glance with her and took my seat. Then, the reception began. Emily, now dressed in a traditional outfit, beamed with a radiant smile. Next to her, the groom, Eric, had the appearance of a sharp and modern CEO. Everyone applauded the couple, celebrating their union. It seemed that many of the guests were executives and employees from Harrison Industries, all gathered to celebrate the couple's new beginning. Harrison Industries is a mid-sized machine design company, and it was no surprise that the wedding of its president was such a grand affair. As the reception reached its midpoint, The bride and groom exited for a quick wardrobe change. Taking this opportunity, I stood up and told Sarah I was heading to the restroom before making my way outside the venue. To my surprise, I ran into Emily and Eric, who had just exited earlier. They were taking commemorative photos after their exit. I hadn't anticipated bumping into them, and feeling slightly flustered, I quickly offered my heartfelt congratulations. "Emily, thank you for inviting me today. Congratulations on your marriage." Emily's expression turned sour as she responded with a dismissive tone. "Oh, you actually came. Did you manage to put together a proper gift? You seem to be wearing a decent suit, at least. Is this guy one of your classmates?" Eric, standing beside Emily, looked me up and down with a scrutinizing gaze. "Yes, he is. I didn't really want to invite him because I was embarrassed, but he insisted on coming." "Embarrassed? Why?" Eric asked, glancing at Emily. "I never insisted on coming. In fact, I'm sure all the classmates here today felt the same way. We only came because Emily urged us to." The words were on the tip of my tongue, but I held them back, not wanting to spoil their big day. However, Emily and Eric continued to mock me without any regard for my feelings. "Because he's only got a middle school education." Emily pointed at me as she spoke. "Whoa. Seriously?" Eric said in an amused tone. The look in his eyes as he glanced at me was filled with blatant contempt. "And yet he's married. What does your wife do, anyway?" Emily asked, so I answered honestly. "She works in cleaning, we both do, at the same company." Hearing this, Emily and Eric exchanged glances before sneering with twisted expressions. "Ah, that's a dirty and smelly job. It's perfect for someone like you with only a middle school diploma. But if I were working for a cleaning company, I'd be too embarrassed to admit it. Yeah, as a CEO, I can't even imagine it. That's as low as it gets." "Hey, don't talk like that." I was angry, but Emily waved her hand dismissively as if shooing away an annoyance. "Just go home already. It's embarrassing to have you here. Poverty might be contagious. Yeah, why did you two even bother coming? Your wife should be ashamed, too. How can she not be embarrassed to walk beside someone like you?" With that, Emily and Eric turned their backs on me and quickly walked away. I clenched my fists, trembling with anger. After everything I went through in middle school, I still came here wanting to genuinely congratulate them, and this is how I'm treated. To not only insult me but also mock Sarah and our work. This is unforgivable. As I stood frozen in the hallway of the wedding venue, I felt a gentle hand on my shoulder. "Sarah, I heard everything, Kevin. I have an idea." Though Sarah wore a calm smile, her voice carried a clear edge of anger. Afterward, I returned to the reception hall with Sarah. A while later, Emily and Eric re-entered the room after their outfit change, but when they noticed I was still there, their faces twisted with displeasure. I did my best to avoid looking at Emily and tried not to let it bother me. As the reception approached its final moments, the host picked up the microphone and began moving around the room. Apparently, the host was going around the room, asking guests to share their congratulations for the couple. Employees from Harrison Industries praised Eric, while a woman who seemed to be one of Emily's friends teared up and said, "I wish you all the happiness." This created a warm and emotional atmosphere. The host eventually made their way over to our table, where Emily's middle school classmates were seated. "Here we have the middle school classmates of the bride, Emily. We'd love to hear your words of congratulations." With those words, the microphone was handed to me. I glanced at Emily, who was glaring at me with a look that clearly said, "Don't you dare say anything unnecessary." I instinctively looked over at Sarah, who gave me a silent nod. I nodded back and began to speak. "I'm one of the bride's classmates. I have just one thing to say. From this point forward, my company, Anderson Cleaning Services, will be terminating all contracts with Eric's company, Harrison Industries." A sudden silence fell over the room. I smiled and handed the microphone back to the host. What exactly does that mean?" The host stammered, visibly sweating, as Emily suddenly spoke up from the head table. "I'm sorry, everyone. This man is emotionally unstable and prone to lying. It's so embarrassing. Here he is, just a lowly janitor, spouting nonsense." Eric quickly jumped in. "That's right. People like them don't belong here. Get them out of here." The atmosphere in the room grew tense as the staff began approaching Sarah and me, who remained seated with calm expressions. But just then, a voice rang out. "Wait. Are you the president of Anderson Cleaning Services and the executive officer, Sarah?" The voice, filled with shock, belonged to Eric's father, who was dressed in a formal tailcoat. Eric had recently taken over Harrison Industries from this man as part of his marriage arrangement. "Indeed, I am the president of Anderson Cleaning Services, and this is my wife, Sarah, the executive officer. We were invited today as the bride's middle school classmates." As I spoke, the guests on Eric's side of the room began murmuring among themselves. Earlier, the bride and groom told us to leave, saying poverty is contagious and that our work is dirty and shameful. Please forgive us for staying despite their request. Sarah said this calmly, and Eric's father, his face turning pale, began shouting at the head table. Eric apologized to these people immediately. But Eric and Emily, half smirking, replied, "Ha! Dad, what are you talking about? Why should we apologize to people like them?" "Exactly. Who even are these people?" Eric's father, his voice trembling, yelled again. "Eric, don't you recognize the name Anderson Cleaning Services?" "Ha! Anderson Cleaning Services." Eric muttered, and as the realization dawned on him, his face grew increasingly pale. "Wait, you mean our major client?" "What?" Emily gasped in shock at Eric's words. "That's right. Recently, we commissioned your company to design and develop cleaning equipment for our business," Sarah said quietly, and I continued. "We also recently placed an additional order for the development of a new vacuum model." In reality, Sarah is the daughter of the owners of Anderson Cleaning Services, a company that I joined after moving to the city. The company I joined after moving to the city was actually run by Sarah's parents. Today, in addition to providing cleaning services, the company develops its own line of cleaning products and has recently entered the e-commerce business. As a result, it's one of the rare cleaning companies that has grown into a $100 million business, with over 6,500 employees at its headquarters alone. I worked my way up from the ground level, contributing to the development of cleaning products that became hits, eventually earning the position of head of product planning at the headquarters. It was there that I met Sarah, and we eventually got married. Despite knowing that I only had a middle school education, Sarah and her family welcomed me warmly. Wanting to repay them for their kindness, I threw myself into my work. Last year, when Sarah's father retired, I was set to take over as president of the company. If we lose the contract with Anderson Cleaning Services, do you have any idea how much financial damage that would cause us? Eric's father, his face now beet red, yelled at his son, who was trembling uncontrollably. Something like this. I had no idea. That's because you didn't take your responsibilities seriously after inheriting the business. You've even forgotten the face of a major client. I never should have handed over the company to you. Come with me, now. Eric's father stormed over to the head table, grabbed Eric by the collar, and dragged him over to where we were. He then forcefully pushed Eric down, making him bow an apology. Please, I beg you for forgiveness. We cannot afford to lose such a critical project that our company's future depends on. Eric's father pleaded, bowing low beside his son. I'm deeply sorry. Please forgive me. Eric, also bowing, began sweating profusely as drops of sweat fell to the floor. As I watched this scene, Sarah turned to me. Kevin, what do you want to do? Then he's fired. He's clearly not fit to be a president. What? When I said this, my former classmates gasped, shocked to realize the level of authority I wielded. Eric's father quickly spoke up in a panic. Of course. It was a mistake on my part to trust him with the company. Well, I have no intention of forgiving him. I was foolish to place an order for new products as a wedding gift. Cries of dismay erupted from the Harrison Industries guests. I even noticed Ryan, the head of sales, collapse in a fit of panic. When I heard at the reunion that Emily was marrying the president of Harrison Industries, I decided to place a large order for new products with their company. I genuinely believed that by inviting me to the wedding, Emily wanted to reconcile. But that expectation was thoroughly betrayed. Emily, who had been watching the situation with a bewildered expression, suddenly turned red and lashed out at me. Who do you think you are, talking like that, whether you're a president or a vice president? I glared at Emily and shot back. Emily, you should be more worried about yourself. If we pull our business, Harrison Industries will suffer significant losses. You might not get to enjoy that luxurious life as a stay-at-home wife you were bragging about. Emily's face turned pale as she finally realized the gravity of her situation. Kevin, let's go. Yeah, Sarah. With Eric and his father still groveling on the floor, and Emily standing frozen with a pale face, I put my arm around Sarah's shoulder and walked out of the room. Afterward, we did indeed terminate our contracts with Harrison Industries. The company suffered severe financial damage as a result, and Eric was stripped of his position as president to take responsibility. Disowned by his father, Eric lost everything, his status, his money, all of it. It seems that with nothing left to hold on to, Eric and Emily eventually chose to divorce as their arguments became constant. Abandoned by her family and with no one left to turn to, Emily now reportedly works in the nightlife industry, living on her own. As for us, we've continued to live peacefully. Recently, we welcomed a beautiful baby boy into our family. Sarah and her family are overjoyed and have been doting on him ever since. I'm so happy that I met you. Sarah. There was a time when I had given up on life. That day, when I boarded the train, desperately seeking somewhere to belong. Even though I was terrified, I'm now truly grateful to my younger self for taking action that day. I'd like you to come with me to visit my mother's grave soon, and, if you're okay with it, I'd also like us to visit my father together. When I said this quietly, Sarah smiled warmly and nodded. Of course. From now on, I plan to cherish each day as I protect my family and the company that we've built together. You must be pretty good at your job if you're giving me a lecture, huh? Let's see you talk to this guy on the phone, old man. Oh, by the way, He's French. I had just retired and been rehired as a part-time employee. It seems like he's not too happy about taking orders from someone like me. Ryan, the new hire who loves to brag about his Harvard degree, challenged me to negotiate in French. Hey, old man. Go on, talk to him. You were acting all high and mighty, weren't you? What's the matter? All talk, huh? Ryan gave me a little shove on the shoulder. I was seriously getting annoyed. Is that so? I took a deep breath and picked up the phone. When Ryan saw what I did, his face went pale. My name is John. I'm 65 years old and just retired this year. After years of hard work, I was asked repeatedly during my retirement farewell tour to stay with the company. I was happy that my contributions had been recognized, so after discussing it with my wife, I decided to rejoin a large, well-known trading company where I had connections. I never thought I could get another job at 65, so I was eager to prove I still had what it takes. However, I had also planned a trip abroad with my wife. You don't have to push yourself too hard, you know? You really love your work, don't you? What are you talking about? Of course, you're more important to me than work. But are you sure? You could still take on a full-time position if you wanted to. No, it's fine. I've worked hard enough already. It's time to let the younger folks take the lead. My wife understood my passion for work, and she also knew how much I truly loved my job. But since we had the chance to travel together, I wanted to make the most of it. This would be our first trip alone together since our honeymoon. During my interview, I requested to be hired as a part-time employee so I could have a flexible schedule. Of course. We'd be thrilled to have you, John. The company was more than happy to accommodate my request. They assured me that they'd adjust my schedule whenever necessary. And so, I was fortunate enough to start working part-time. In this new company, I recognized a few familiar faces from previous dealings, which made the job easier. Of course, there were plenty of new things I needed to learn, but I used my experience to compensate for my age and quickly got up to speed. Just like before retirement, my hard work was appreciated by those around me. John, you're really fast. As expected. Well, I'm getting old. I used to pick things up a lot quicker back in the day. If there's anything you don't get, just ask me. I'm getting pretty good at this job now, too. Even though, technically, I was the junior in terms of hire date, the familiar employees treated me warmly. Some of them even came to me with questions when they were stuck, knowing about my previous work experience. I shared my knowledge without hesitation. Even though I'm just an old man now, it felt good to know my experience could still help others. Work really is fun. I'm glad I got a job in this industry again. I was living a very fulfilling life. Then, it came time for the new hires to be assigned to their departments after completing a month-long training period. Naturally, our department was also getting a new employee. We were all called to gather in the middle of the office. It's that time of year again. We have a new member joining us, so please help them out if they need it. The supervisor of the department nudged the newcomer forward, encouraging them to introduce themselves. The newcomer stepped up in front of everyone. He was reasonably good-looking and wore a stylish suit. He opened his mouth to speak. Ha! Is he speaking English? Everyone in the department tilted their heads in confusion. The new guy had suddenly started speaking in English. But it was hard to make out what he was saying. Oh, sorry about that. I've been at Harvard for so long. Anyway, nice to meet you all. My name is Ryan. I'm looking forward to working with you." The new guy, Ryan, bowed his head. Despite the surprise of him speaking English, everyone clapped politely. Ryan, perhaps misinterpreting their surprised expressions, flashed a smug smile. "Sorry about that. I'm so used to speaking English that it just slips out sometimes." Back when I was at Harvard, Ryan kept talking about himself for another 5 minutes. He mentioned Harvard graduate several times, making sure everyone knew how good he was at English. And so, it's about time to get back to work. Let's wrap up the introductions. Well then, looking forward to working with you, Ryan. Yes. Thank you, looking forward to working with you too. Mark, the supervisor, cut him off and directed everyone to get back to work. Ryan responded with a bright smile. From that day on, there wasn't a single day when Ryan wasn't a topic of conversation in the department. He made an effort to communicate in English every day. While his enthusiasm was appreciated, it reached a point where people had to stop their work just to deal with his interactions, leaving them with awkward smiles. As we worked together, we realized that Ryan's so-called fluent English was actually quite hard to understand. Well, you know, I only communicated in English while I was at Harvard, so it just comes out naturally. Ryan would say, but even for native English speakers, his English was difficult to follow, and sometimes we had no idea what he was saying. However, given how much he bragged, no one felt comfortable telling him that directly. Even when we didn't understand what he was saying, we just nodded along to keep the conversation going. Then one day, Ryan approached me. He asked something, but I couldn't make out what he was saying and tilted my head in confusion. "Could you repeat that?" I said. Ryan repeated himself, but with the same unclear pronunciation and rhythm, making it impossible to understand. The only word I could catch was school. But since I didn't think I'd be able to understand even if he repeated it in English, I decided to ask him a favor. Could you please say it in Japanese?" I tried to smile politely, but Ryan clicked his tongue in irritation. "Ha? You don't understand English? Why is a guy who can't even speak English working here? This company expects everyone to be fluent in English. You know?" Ryan's tone was clearly mocking. There was no one else around at the time. Knowing this, Ryan lightly tapped my shoulder. "Hey, old man, I was asking where you went to college." "Even in Japanese universities, they teach English, right?" "Well, actually, I didn't go to college. I only graduated from middle school." "What? Middle school? You're kidding me. How did you get into this company?" Ryan burst out laughing, to the point where tears welled up in his eyes. "Oh, come on. Seriously? Is this company that desperate for workers? Hiring an old man with only a middle school education who can't even speak English? Oh, I get it. You were hired as a janitor, weren't you?" Laughing as if he had no more use for me, Ryan walked past me. From that day on, Ryan's attitude towards me changed drastically. He would snicker behind my back and mutter something in English as we passed each other. I still couldn't understand his English, but from his tone, it was clear he was mocking me. Somehow, he had also found out that I was working part-time, and his behavior started to escalate. But after so many years of working, I'd encountered plenty of people like Ryan before. I tried not to let it bother me too much and maintained a mature attitude. As long as it doesn't affect my work. He'll probably get bored and stop eventually. With that in mind, I continued to enjoy my work as usual, spending time with my wife when I got home. Although Ryan's presence made things a bit more challenging, I was still living a happy life, just like before. A few days later. John. Oh, David. What's up? There's something I'd like you to handle. Could you take a look at this? David, the department manager, handed me some documents. As I glanced through them, I realized they were about a contract with a major American company, ST Corporation. ST Corporation is one of the world's largest companies, with branches all over the globe. I had heard of them many times before. Since they have so many branches, I thought you'd be the right person for this. Are you sure it's okay to give such a big job to someone who's just part-time? Oh, come on, John. I trust you. Oh, by the way, Ryan. Hey, Ryan. David called out to Ryan. Ryan quickly responded, but he frowned slightly when he saw me. That frown turned to confusion and anger as David continued. What is it, David? Ryan, since you're good at English, you'll be assisting John. Watch how he works and learn from him. What? I'm supposed to assist John? As an assistant? Yes, I might assign you similar tasks in the future, so pay close attention. John, I'm counting on you. Got it. David cheerfully walked away from the department. I headed to the printer to make copies of the documents. Behind me, I could hear Ryan grumbling. Why do I have to? Why with this old man? I couldn't help but let out a deep sigh. Turning to Ryan, I looked him in the eye and gave him a firm but calm reprimand. Like it or not, work is work. Let's do this together. As David said, you might be handling this on your own someday, so pay close attention. Here are the documents. We'll start the meeting soon, so I'll go reserve a conference room. Wait there. Ryan looked displeased. Without saying a word, he took the copied documents from me, and I went off to reserve the room. After securing the room and sending a message to Ryan, I went to the archives to find additional materials. When I returned to the department with the documents I found, Ryan was already gone. According to my colleagues, he had already headed to the conference room. I grabbed my laptop and headed to the room as well. You're late. I've been waiting, Ryan muttered the moment I opened the door. His tone was entirely different from when David was around, and I felt a surge of irritation. But I reminded myself that he was still young. He probably had a lot of frustrations with me. I opened my laptop on the desk and handed Ryan the additional materials. I was looking for more information. We're dealing with a large company, so the usual Japanese methods might not work. It's important to gather as much information as possible. Researching documents is crucial. I handed him the materials. Here, these and these. Make sure you go through them. He snatched the documents from my hand, almost yanking them away. Ryan took the papers with a sulky attitude. Why do I have to assist this old man? He can't even speak English. Do you even know how to use that laptop? Want me to show you how to use the keyboard? I know how to use it just fine. I clenched my fist. I squeezed it tight, trying my best to hold back my frustration. It couldn't be helped. He's still young, after all, rebellion is to be expected, and he's bound to make mistakes at work too. I had seen Ryan approach his work with a serious attitude before, so I believed he would put in the effort this time as well. As long as he could complete this big project successfully, that's all that mattered. With that in mind, I suppressed my anger at Ryan's words. After he finished reading through the documents, We started discussing how to proceed with the negotiations. Based on the information we have, this company excels in this area, and they seem to be looking for this right now. So, we should focus on pushing this. No, this one's better. If it were up to me, I'd do it like this. But that approach could cause problems. Problems that haven't even happened yet. And besides, it wouldn't result in much of a loss, right? What are you talking about? Even if our losses are minimal, the other company could suffer significant losses. That's why we should. Are you kidding me? That would just reduce our profits and create unnecessary work. Ryan opposed every suggestion I made. He didn't nod in agreement a single time during our discussion. I tried to stay calm, thinking he might have a better idea, so I listened to his opinions. But every suggestion he made had flaws. His proposals were all focused on maximizing our company's profits, without considering how the other company would react. Time passed with nothing decided. And Ryan became increasingly frustrated with me for not going along with his ideas. This plan is terrible. Seriously, everything the low-educated old man comes up with is useless. You're so dumb, old man. I'm still your senior. Don't use such language while we're working. But you're just a part-timer, right? Does a part-timer even count as a senior? I'm a full-time employee. Being part-time doesn't matter right now. The job is the job, so do it properly. Yeah. We continued typing up the plan on the computer, preparing the documents to submit to David. When I reached the section for person in charge of calls who would handle the negotiations, Ryan took it upon himself to type in his own name. John, you can't speak English, right? Leave it to me. Unlike someone with just a middle school education, I've got real experience abroad. He typed with a smug grin on his face. He even started filling in details that hadn't been agreed upon yet, without consulting me. I felt something snap inside me. Enough! Work is not a game. My sudden shout made Ryan flinch, but then he stood up, trying to tower over me. You're the one who should back off. You're just some low-educated old man who shouldn't even be handling this kind of work. You're just an old guy with nothing going for you except your age, and it's pathetic how David grovels to you. Someone like you should be stuck in the back organizing papers in the warehouse. Why don't you go do that instead? Ryan's outburst made me stand up as well. I'm still your senior, and you should know better than to use such language in a professional setting. How do you think it feels for your coworkers to hear such disrespectful words? My loud voice startled Ryan. I rarely raised my voice, so he seemed genuinely shocked. But I didn't care. I pointed to the documents spread out on the table and continued. You haven't even properly reviewed these materials. You don't know anything about the other company. You haven't even bothered to do any research. Nor have you asked me any questions. Understanding your negotiation partner is the most basic principle of this job. Haven't you been taught even the basics? Ryan's face turned bright red as he slammed his laptop shut. Then, he grabbed his laptop and stormed out of the conference room. As he left, he loudly clicked his tongue. If you're going to be like that, then why don't you just do all the grunt work yourself, old man? A part-timer like you should stick to the basics. Wait. I called after him, but Ryan kept walking and disappeared somewhere. I watched him vanish beyond the door, and then I regained my composure. Taking a deep breath, I sat down alone in the now quiet conference room. The next day. Considering how heated our argument was, I figured Ryan wouldn't show up for work. Maybe I should have handled it more calmly. I felt a twinge of regret and a bit of loneliness as I headed to work that morning. However, as soon as I arrived, Ryan, looking rather smug, came straight over to me. "Good morning, John. Wow, you've already reset your mindset. That's impressive, really." Impressed by Ryan's quick recovery, I greeted him cheerfully as well. "Oh, good morning, Ryan. About yesterday," I began, but Ryan cut me off and handed me a document. I took it, giving him a curious look. "I've already finished the work. Unlike a part-timer, I'm quick at this stuff." "What is this?" "It's the report we were working on yesterday. Don't tell me you forgot already?" It was the document we had worked on together, despite our disagreements. "You've already put the report together?" "Well, at least you didn't include any of the details we hadn't finalized." Relieved, I started to review the document. But something felt off when I reached the section with the financial figures. I double-checked, then triple-checked the numbers. 1, 2, 3. As I frantically went over the figures, Ryan burst out laughing, clutching his stomach. "Are you nitpicking the document just because a newbie put it together? There's no way a Harvard grad like me would make a mistake. Besides, I've already sent it over." "You've sent it to the client?" "Of course. I work fast, remember?" I was stunned by Ryan's words. Despite my resolve not to raise my voice after yesterday, I couldn't help but shout, "Hey, this amount is wrong. If this goes through, our company could lose $1,000 million. "What?" My voice echoed through the department. And as if to amplify the tension, the sound of a phone ringing followed. The internal line buzzed, and I quickly answered. "This is John from the International Sales Department." "Hello, is Ryan there?" "There's a call for him from the French branch of ST Corporation." It was a call for Ryan. Ryan snatched the phone from my hand, asking to be connected. The line to the French branch was connected. I couldn't hear the other person's voice, so I watched Ryan anxiously. Ryan began speaking in English over the phone. He seemed to be repeating the same words over and over, but then he suddenly switched to hesitant French. It seemed like the other party didn't understand his English. As I watched with growing concern, I heard a loud voice on the other end of the line, followed by the sound of the call being abruptly disconnected. Ryan stood there in shock, lowering the receiver slowly. I gently tapped his shoulder. "What did they say?" The moment I asked, Ryan's face twisted with anger, and he slapped my hand away. "Don't mess with me. This is your fault, old man. If you just finalized everything and sent the documents yesterday, this wouldn't have happened." His words made me involuntarily take a heavy breath. But this time, I managed to stay calm as I spoke. "Don't blame others. It was your reckless actions that caused this. Now, tell me what they said." "Shut up. I'm still processing it." "You didn't understand, did you?" "Shut up. I only studied a little French. But I understood the words." I placed a calming hand on Ryan's shoulder, trying to steady him. "Calm down. Next time you're on the phone with them, make sure to take notes. And if you don't understand something, let me take over. It's important to admit when you don't know something, it's part of being a professional." "Then you do it, old man." Ryan cut me off, his frustration boiling over. "Don't you dare order me around, you low-educated geezer. Stop wasting time with your pointless advice and just do your job. He pointed at the phone and laughed at me. It was a mocking, derisive laugh. Come on, give it a try. You're the one who thinks you're so smart, right? Let's see what you can do, Mr. Middle School Education. Oh, by the way, the person on the other end speaks French. Ryan's words grew sharper and more cutting, like a blade. But there was no time for this. Our work couldn't wait. I glanced at the clock. We were running out of time. So I reluctantly pressed the button to redial the number. The phone rang. Bonjour, this is the French branch of ST Corporation. Bonjour, this is the Inspire Incorporated from Japan. I'd like to speak with your representative, please. Ah, of course. One moment, please. I glanced over at Ryan. His eyes were wide, his mouth slightly open as he stared at me. He was clearly shocked that I could speak French. Hello? We can't communicate like this, your French is too. I deeply apologize for earlier. My name is John, and I'll be taking over the call. Oh. Finally, someone who understands me. Great. I called because I needed to urgently discuss something. It's about the documents you sent this morning. I explained the errors in the documents and sincerely apologized with all my heart. I assured them that I would create new, corrected documents and resend them promptly. Fortunately, it was still at the review stage, so the financial figures hadn't been finalized, and we were able to avoid any serious consequences. Relieved, I thanked the representative and ended the call. Phew. It's a good thing we caught it in time. I turned to face Ryan directly. You know, they said they couldn't understand a word of your French. So what if you can speak French? Just as Ryan was about to retort, the internal phone rang again. Ryan jumped, startled. Beep. Excuse me. We're getting a lot of calls. There's one from the Chinese branch of ST Corporation, as well as the Italian and Spanish branches. Ryan's face turned pale as I glanced at him. It dawned on me immediately. Ryan likely only knew English. I quickly picked up the phone and asked the operator to connect me to each branch in turn. Hello, this is John speaking. I began speaking to the person on the other end in Chinese. There was no time to observe Ryan's reaction. China, Italy, Spain. I handled each call in a different language, and by the time I finished, quite a bit of time had passed. After the final call ended, I took a deep breath, grateful it was over. I sat down and hurriedly transferred my notes from the calls into my notebook. I needed to communicate the details to the relevant departments before I forgot. Ryan, could you recalculate the figures on the documents you prepared? Let's correct them quickly and resend them to the branches. Yes. Noticing Ryan's weak response, I finally looked over at him. His face was devoid of energy, clearly showing the regret and frustration of having made a mistake. While typing on his computer, Ryan asked me a question without meeting my gaze. How many languages can you speak? About 10, I replied. There were people from those regions in my previous job, so once I explained the situation, they understood immediately. And the calls went smoothly. It seems like we'll be able to fix everything. We really dodged a bullet. But if it's in English, I could. Ryan stammered, trying to defend himself. I couldn't help but share something I'd overheard, thinking maybe it would finally get through to him. Michael from the American branch said you were quite the cocky guy. He mentioned that while you're fast at work, you make a lot of mistakes. He also said that just because you can speak English doesn't mean you're doing a good job. What? And by the way, your English is really hard to understand. I couldn't follow it myself. And Michael mentioned that there were times he couldn't understand you either. He's planning to ask David to have me take over your duties until you can communicate more clearly, to avoid disrupting the work. Honestly, you've just added more to my plate. When I looked at Ryan after saying this, he had a betrayed expression on his face. It seemed that no one had ever pointed this out to him before. I paused my work and turned to face Ryan directly. Language is a tool for communication, but what really matters is the heart behind it. Being able to communicate should be a given, there's no point in flaunting it. You didn't graduate from Harvard just because you could speak English, right? It was because you studied hard and learned how to use English to accomplish something more. I gently patted Ryan's back, trying to encourage him. I made plenty of mistakes when I was younger too. I was often ridiculed for only having a middle school education. But I wasn't mocked forever. I worked hard, overcame those challenges, and that's why I'm here now. Ryan, you're still young. So it's okay to make mistakes. Just make sure you don't repeat them. Ryan, who had been yelling earlier, was now quiet. He looked down, seeming to contemplate what I had said. Eventually, he nodded silently in agreement. Satisfied, I turned back to my desk. All right, let's get back to work. Don't worry, we've managed to pull through so far, so let's keep it up and finish the job. Okay. Ryan responded softly. From that point on, the work flowed smoothly, with no more arguments between us. The workday had finally come to an end. Outside the window, the sky was pitch dark. Normally, I'd start packing up with a sense of accomplishment, but today, I had somewhere else to go with Ryan. With both of us feeling nervous, we knocked on the door in front of us. The sign on the door read President's Office. Knock, knock. Come in. It's John and Ryan. Ah, come in. Excuse us. Excuse me. Together, we opened the door to the president's office. Inside was our president, Mr. Anderson, his face stern with anger. This meeting was about today's mistake. We had narrowly avoided a huge loss, but it had been a close call. I had immediately informed Mr. Anderson of the situation. What were you thinking? Ryan, still standing, was scolded by Mr. Anderson. If he had looked pale before, now he was beyond pale, practically ghostly white. His face was drained of all color, as if he were a dead man walking. He was probably imagining the worst possible outcome in his head. Desperately bowing his head, he clenched his fists and struggled to hold back tears. Standing beside him, I also bowed deeply to Mr. Anderson. The president's scolding came to a halt. Mr. Anderson, I deeply apologize. Ryan acted prematurely, but I am also to blame. I failed in my responsibility to guide him properly. From now on, I will approach my work with renewed diligence. I bowed my head repeatedly in apology. Seeing my sincerity, Mr. Anderson sighed deeply, looking conflicted, before sitting back in his chair. I'll let this slide, thanks to John. But Ryan, you need to be prepared to leave the company if you make another mistake like this. Ryan looked up at Mr. Anderson. Mr. Anderson nodded solemnly. Thank you. I'll be extremely careful not to make any more mistakes. Thank you so much. Thank John for that. Now, both of you must be exhausted. Go home for today, and let's continue working hard from tomorrow. Yes, thank you. Thank you, and have a good night. After bowing again, we quietly left the president's office. As soon as we stepped out, Ryan turned to me and bowed deeply. "John, thank you. Really, thank you." His attitude had completely changed. He seemed like a different person. It was as if Ryan had been reborn. I waved my hand dismissively as I prepared to leave. But before I could finish, Ryan, with newfound determination, bent at the waist in a gesture of respect. "John, please let me learn from you. I want to observe and learn from your example in this job. Please teach me everything you can. I'm asking you sincerely." Hearing his words made me feel appreciated, and I couldn't help but smile as I scratched my cheek. "Just make sure you watch and learn." "Yes." From that moment on, Ryan became much more humble. It was as if he was a completely different person. He stopped bragging entirely and began listening carefully to others. When problems arose, he quickly sought advice. The large project we were working on proceeded smoothly without any further mistakes. As I worked closely with him, I realized that his Harvard education had given him a sharp intellect. He was highly capable, picking up new skills quickly and applying them effectively. He was an exceptionally talented individual. Even the issues I had noticed with his English improved significantly after I pointed them out. Ryan took the feedback to heart and worked hard to correct his mistakes, making his English much easier to understand. Correcting deeply ingrained habits in language is difficult, but Ryan put in the effort to practice diligently. I had Ryan speak with Michael, our American contact, over the phone to test his progress. Michael was deeply impressed. "Now I can trust him with this," he said, giving Ryan his full endorsement. As a result, my workload began to decrease, and now I'm able to take time off whenever I want, making more room in my schedule. Now, I enjoy spending time traveling abroad with my wife while continuing to work hard. Mistakes are something everyone makes. There isn't a single person who hasn't failed at some point. However, what matters most is what you do after making a mistake. I've come to believe that it's okay to fail repeatedly as long as you keep trying to correct those failures. What's important isn't hiding your mistakes, but learning from them and moving forward, something I've learned anew at my age. "Stop it, please. This is unacceptable." "Ha? What's the problem? I just touched you a little." As I walked through the hallway of our client's company, I suddenly heard a woman scream from somewhere. Rushing towards the sound, I found a petite woman being cornered by a man in a cramped break room. "What the hell are you doing? She clearly doesn't like this." As I stepped inside and stopped, I realized the man was likely an employee of the company. He looked me up and down, sneering at my work uniform. "And who the hell are you? Some subcontractor? Mind your own business, outsider." "It doesn't matter if I'm an outsider or not. She's uncomfortable, back off." "Ha? A lowly subcontractor like you, acting all high and mighty?" The man shouted in anger and threw the coffee he was holding into my face. The coffee dripped down my face, staining my light gray work uniform with dark brown spots. "Look at that, I cleaned up your dirty work clothes for you. A stain like that suits a ground-crawling subcontractor like you. You pathetic loser. Are you all right?" The woman, who had been trembling and on the verge of tears, hurriedly began wiping my face with a handkerchief. The man had no idea yet. This encounter would mark the beginning of his descent into a living hell, drastically altering his fate. "My name is Jake. I am the head of the development department at a major manufacturer." Although the title of department head usually brings to mind someone sitting comfortably in an office giving orders to subordinates, I, a graduate of an industrial university, often head out to the field in my work clothes. It allows me to gather various opinions and get a clearer understanding of the situation. Today, as usual, I changed into my work uniform and headed to our factory. While gathering feedback from employees on whether there were any issues with the products, I was also thinking of new ideas for product development. Jake, the delivery of parts has been delayed recently, and the manufacturing process is also falling behind. Is there anything we can do about this? An employee in charge of the manufacturing line approached me. Although I work in product development, not in the manufacturing department. Could you talk to Ted, the section chief of the manufacturing department, about that? But Ted is so laid back, he hardly ever contacts the head office. But you go back to the head office every day, right? Could you just mention it to the person in charge of ordering? Alright, I'll talk to them. To be honest, it's against the rules for someone from a different department to step in and interfere, ignoring the hierarchy within the company. Even my response just now wasn't exactly praiseworthy. There's a problem with the employee asking me, who isn't their direct supervisor, and with me not being able to refuse. Yes. I've always had trouble saying no when someone asks me for something. You could say I'm a good-natured person, but in my case, being a people pleaser or indecisive is more accurate. In other words, I'm afraid of being disliked. When I returned to the head office, I received a call from the president's office, asking me to come immediately. Feeling puzzled, I headed to the president's office, where Mr. Owens, the president, greeted me in high spirits. I'm glad you came. Actually, about the new product you developed recently, it's getting quite a good reception. Thank you. So, I'm thinking of shutting down one of the production lines that's seeing a drop in output and shifting it to produce more of the new product. What do you think? When Mr. Owens said this, I remembered what was mentioned to me at the factory today. Speaking of which, there was a complaint at the factory today about delayed part deliveries. Those parts are also essential for the new product. So if we increase production lines, we'll need to secure more parts. I see. In that case, we'll need to find new suppliers for the parts. I'll have someone from the manufacturing department contact you later. So please give them specific instructions on what we need. Yes, understood. And also, Mr. Owens hesitated a bit, as if gauging my reaction, before continuing. We're considering promoting you soon. What do you think? A promotion. Yes, your track record is outstanding. Since you joined the company, you've developed numerous products, all of which have become key items for us. With such achievements, a promotion seems like a well-deserved right, don't you think? However, I'm more of a technical person, and I feel more suited to my current role. Besides, I lack the leadership skills to manage others effectively. That's exactly what concerns me, your lack of confidence, and your indecisiveness. But still, we intend to promote you eventually. From now on, I want you to act with more confidence. Yes. The sudden talk of a promotion left me feeling unsettled. Even just being appointed as the head of the development department in my early 30s felt overwhelming. And the thought of taking on even more responsibility was daunting. One day, a representative from a company we planned to do business with came to introduce themselves as we were deciding on a new supplier for the new product. Nice to meet you. I'm Emma. I'll be handling our meetings moving forward. It's a pleasure to work with you. She bowed her head politely, and despite being a sales representative, she seemed inexperienced and quite nervous. It was endearing in a way, and as we met several times for meetings, I learned that she had recently transferred from a technical role to the sales department. Our shared technical background made it easy to talk, and she was attentive to the specifications of the parts we discussed, which made the conversations flow smoothly. Today, my explanations took longer than expected, and we ended up working well past business hours. So I decided to treat her to a meal as an apology. That said, I was too shy to invite her out for a meal, so I ordered takeout to the office, and we ate in the conference room. I feel bad you're treating me to a meal when it was my fault for asking so many questions. No, I should be the one taking you out to a nice restaurant, but I know women usually don't like being asked out by a superior at work. So, let's stick with takeout for now. Oh, not at all. I really appreciate how clearly you explained everything to someone like me who's not great with words. And, honestly, I'd love to go out for a meal outside of work too, if that's okay. What? Her unexpected comment took me by surprise, but I quickly composed myself, not wanting to get carried away. That makes me happy, but during negotiations, rumors can start easily. For now, let's stick to takeout at the office. I'll find some really good delivery options for us. Yes. Thank you. Our professional relationship continued to go smoothly from there. The supply of parts for the new product was efficient, and the new production line was getting up and running. Sales were strong, and production was struggling to keep up, leading to discussions about building a new factory dedicated to the new product. That's amazing. Your product is trending online. Thanks. Because of that, we're even planning to build a new factory. If that happens, the number of parts we'll need from your company will increase several times over. Several times over? That's incredible. Yeah, but at the same time, there's talk of my promotion as well. Isn't that great news? Well, it's not as great for me. You see, I have a hard time saying no to people. I'm worried that if I get promoted, no one will want to follow me. I found myself confiding in her about my indecisive nature, as our conversations had become more relaxed. You know, I just can't say no when people ask me for things. I worry that even if I get promoted, no one will want to follow someone like me. That's not true. Sure, subordinates often have high expectations of their superiors, but I'm sure many people appreciate your kindness and humanity. I bet they'd all follow you. Do you really think so? As her words started to boost my confidence, I noticed she suddenly looked downcast. Even though I said all that, I'm the same way. It takes a lot of courage to say no, especially to a boss or a man. You worry they might retaliate later, you know? Even you feel that way? Of course. But, well, I'm going to work on saying no when I need to from now on. Yeah, let's both work on that. Yes. We parted ways after our conversation, but I couldn't stop thinking about why I've always been so indecisive. I started reflecting on an incident from my elementary school days, which I believe is the root of my hesitation. It happened when I was a young boy, playing with my good friend, Dany, on the playground. Hey, you little brats. Get out of here, you're in the way. A group of older boys, probably middle schoolers, much bigger and mean-looking, approached us and demanded that we leave the playground. Back then, I was fearless, the type of kid who would say no without hesitation if something didn't sit right with me. So, I stood my ground and responded firmly to the older boys. No way. We were here first. What did you say, you little runt? Talking back to us, huh? You want to get hurt? Without warning, one of the middle schoolers hurled a baseball at us, aiming directly at me and Dany. I still remember how hard that baseball was, leaving a nasty bruise where it struck. Ouch. As I doubled over in pain, the boys laughed at my misery. The next moment, I heard a terrible scream from Dany on the other side. When I looked over, I saw that the same hardball that had hit me earlier had now struck Dany squarely in the face. Dany collapsed, clutching his face in agony. Let's get out of here. The middle schoolers panicked and ran off, leaving us behind. As a result, Dany ended up with a broken nose and fractured cheekbone, a serious injury. The middle schoolers who hurt us weren't caught immediately. Dany never blamed me, but our friendship became strained, and we gradually drifted apart. I was sure he had grown to dislike me. I deeply regretted standing up to those boys, which led to Dany getting hurt. I kept thinking that if I had just quietly left the playground, Dany wouldn't have been injured. From that moment on, I began avoiding conflict, becoming someone who couldn't say no. So that's it. I've been running away from challenges ever since then. Although I've grown into an adult physically, emotionally, I'm still that scared little boy. I realized that I'd been afraid of confrontation and rejection all this time. I can't keep living like this. I made up my mind to change myself and went to see Mr. Owens. Then, I informed him that I would accept the promotion he had offered. A short time later, it was decided in a company meeting that we would build a new factory dedicated to the production of the new product. As a result, we placed a massive order with Emma's company for specialized parts and factory equipment, totaling $100 million. While I was at the factory discussing details, Mr. Owens arrived with Mr. Smith, the president of one of our key partners. Let me introduce you. This is Jake, who will be leading the new project. Mr. Owens introduced me to Mr. Smith. Ah, so this is the man behind your company's latest innovations. Yes, that's right. He's still young, but he's got a bright future ahead of him. He's the one who's going to lead our company forward. Mr. Owens, please. I was taken aback by Mr. Owens' high praise. So you're the one everyone's been talking about. If Mr. Owens says so, I'm sure you're the right person for the job. I'm putting him in charge of everything related to the new project. Oh, by the way, Jake, could you go over to our partner's office and review the contract documents? Me? Right now? I was still in my work clothes, as the meeting at the factory wasn't finished. But Mr. Smith and the others didn't seem to mind. Sure, I'll accompany you. I got into the car and headed to the partner's office. As we arrived and were being shown to the conference room, someone approached Mr. Smith with what seemed to be an urgent matter. Mr. Smith asked me to proceed to the conference room with his secretary, who would be waiting up ahead. Of course, I don't mind. I'll wait in the room ahead. I replied, starting to head down the corridor. But just as I was about to reach the end, I heard Emma's voice coming from somewhere nearby. Stop it, please. This is inappropriate. Ha? What's the big deal? I'm just asking you to have some tea with me. Please, John, this is making me uncomfortable. We're still at work. What? You're just a young, inexperienced newbie. What are you resisting for? Last time, you made me stay with you for hours. I can't keep doing this. What did you say? This is part of your job. Spending hours with you isn't part of my job. This is wrong. I immediately rushed toward the voice and found myself at the break room, where Emma was being cornered by a man in a cramped space. The man, whom she called John, was gripping her arm. Filled with anger, I quickly stepped between them. What do you think you're doing? Can't you see she's uncomfortable? The man looked me up and down, sneering at my work uniform. And who the hell are you? Did some subcontractor sneak in here? That doesn't matter. Let go of her and apologize right now. Ha? What are you babbling about? This isn't any of your business. Whether I'm an outsider or not isn't the issue. Listen to this guy, acting all high and mighty. You're just a lowly subcontractor. In the workplace, there's no higher or lower. And for your information, I'm here on business with Mr. Smith. What? You're here for Mr. Smith? Don't make me laugh. The man shouted and then threw the coffee he was holding right into my face. Fortunately, it wasn't too hot, but the coffee dripped down, staining my light gray work uniform with dark brown splotches. Look at that. Your dirty work clothes are all nicely decorated now. Perfect for someone like you who crawls around in the dirt. You pathetic loser. You? Jake, are you okay? John, this is awful. Emma, who had been trembling with teary eyes, hurriedly started wiping my face with a handkerchief. As I looked at the man laughing in front of me, a vivid memory from the past flashed before my eyes. The sneering smile, the mocking tone, everything about him was eerily familiar. And that name, John. I was sure I had heard it before. Could you be the same John from back then? Yes, the man standing before me was the same John who had thrown that baseball at me and Dany all those years ago. I recalled the pain from the ball hitting me and the image of Dany writhing on the ground. He was like this back then, too. He would torment those he perceived as weaker, laughing joyfully as he did. Unforgivable. A surge of anger welled up inside me, turning my vision red. At that moment, Mr. Smith came running up behind me, clearly alarmed by the commotion. What on earth is going on here? Ah, Mr. Smith, nothing to worry about. I was just teaching this outsider a lesson for sneaking into the company. I'll call security to have him removed shortly, John said with a smug grin. But Mr. Smith, looking genuinely flustered, immediately started apologizing to me. Jake, I'm so sorry. It seems John has caused some trouble. Yes, he was harassing her, and when I stepped in to stop him, he threw coffee in my face. As you can see. I pointed to my coffee-stained uniform. Mr. Smith turned pale and apologized profusely. I'm terribly sorry. John, what on earth have you done? What? Why are you apologizing to this guy, Mr. Smith? I find myself beyond anger, feeling more exasperated with the man who still hasn't grasped the situation. Mr. Smith, I've appreciated the business relationship we've had, but from now on, we'll be terminating all dealings. I cannot conduct a $100 million deal with a company that employs someone who can't even follow basic social rules. What? $100 million? What kind of joke is that? Are you kidding me? Even as the man continued his tirade, Emma raised her voice. John, this man is the CEO of Owens Corporation. Do you think you can cover a loss of $100 million all by yourself? As I watched Emma glare at the man, I thought to myself, but I'm the next CEO. In reality, my father is the current CEO of Owens Corporation. He's been urging me to take over the company as soon as possible. I had previously confided in Emma about being the son of the CEO. Due to my indecisiveness and reluctance to make decisions, I had been avoiding the heavy responsibility of being Owens's heir by working in a technical role. But I couldn't keep running away anymore. That man has been throwing around insults, calling me a subcontractor and a loser, but I happen to be the next CEO of Owens Corporation. And after being humiliated by having coffee thrown on my company uniform, I see no reason to continue our contract. My father has entrusted me with this deal, and I've decided that our business relationship ends here. Please wait. Let's discuss this in the conference room. No, Mr. Smith. I can't stay any longer in these clothes, so I'll be leaving now. Wait, please. Don't say that. I'll have a change of clothes prepared for you immediately. As Mr. Smith frantically tried to salvage the situation, John finally seemed to realize the gravity of the situation and hurriedly bowed his head to me. I am terribly sorry. I didn't know you were our business partner. Please forgive me. No, it's too late. Goodbye. I turned on my heel and left the building. As I walked out, I could hear Mr. Smith furiously yelling at John behind me. Outside, Emma came running after me, slightly out of breath. Jake. When I turned around, I saw her eyes brimming with tears as she tried her best to apologize. Thank you so much. That man is my boss, and he's been making advances toward me constantly. No matter how many times I told him to stop, he wouldn't listen. She went on to explain that she had faced various unpleasant experiences in her previous role in product development simply because she was a woman. When she brought up the issue of better working conditions to Thomas, the section chief, she was called insolent and subsequently transferred to another department. In this day and age, this kind of thing shouldn't happen. But when people reported it to their superiors, they were threatened with bad performance reviews, so everyone just kept quiet. After our conversation, I decided to start saying no to things I didn't like. But, well, you saw how that turned out. I see. Yes. But I'm really glad you helped me today. From now on, I'm going to muster the courage to speak up to higher-ups. Even if it's just a little at a time, I'm going to work towards making my dream come true. Your dream? When I asked her about her dream, she shyly shared her thoughts. It's a bit embarrassing to admit, but my company is a difficult place for women to work. But I really love the products we make. So I don't want to quit. I want to create a better working environment for women and increase the number of female employees. I see. That's amazing. As I listened to her, an idea crossed my mind. Would you let me help you achieve that dream? What? She was surprised, but I explained my idea to her. After hearing it, she nodded enthusiastically and gave me a beaming smile. The next day, Mr. Smith and John showed up at my company. I had already informed my father, Mr. Owens, about the incident with John, and he had assured me that I had full authority over the matter. So, what brings a company that insulted my son here today? When my father addressed them, Mr. Smith bowed so low that his head almost touched the floor. I deeply apologize for what happened yesterday. No amount of apology could suffice. But I've brought him here to offer his personal apology as well. My deepest apologies. After Mr. Smith, John also offers an apology, but it's clear that he doesn't genuinely mean it. He has reflected deeply on his actions, and we hope you'll reconsider the contract. In response, I said to Mr. Smith, Since you've come all this way, I'm willing to reconsider on one condition. Yes. Anything you ask. First, there are allegations that John has harassed multiple female employees. I want these claims thoroughly investigated. And appropriate disciplinary action must be taken. Secondly, I want your company to commit to creating a work environment that is more supportive of women. Upon hearing this, John, unable to keep silent, suddenly spoke up. Excuse me, but isn't that an unfounded accusation? No, it's not just what happened in the break room yesterday. I've heard that you've been harassing female employees for quite some time. Ha! That's just her making things up. It's just the jealousy of a woman who can't get attention. Don't take her seriously. She's not the only one making complaints against you. You've been accused of claiming women are incompetent, forcing them to clean toilets, locking them in storage rooms, and denying them overtime pay. There are even cases of you unjustly transferring women to distant locations. The list goes on. What? And you believe these women? What's wrong with telling incompetent people they're incompetent? You have no proof that I harassed anyone. So stop with the nonsense. Oh, but I do have proof. Here are the written testimonies from those women, detailing the unjust treatment they received from you. We've also reviewed the security camera footage in the office, which clearly shows your actions. I placed a stack of complaint letters from the women on the table. John's face briefly contorted with fear, but he still refused to admit his guilt. Even if there's footage, it's probably just when they were coming on to me. And those letters? You must have paid them to make this stuff up. Oh, is that what you think? I decided to bring up another point to John, who was still stubbornly denying everything. By the way, didn't you have a run-in with the police a while back? For assault? What? How do you know about that? When you were in middle school, you threw a hardball at a kid playing in the park and caused a serious injury. Do you remember that? John seemed to recall something but tried to hide it. I don't know what you're talking about. You have no proof that I did anything wrong. If you do, show it right now. As John arrogantly demanded evidence, I smiled calmly and spoke. Then, from behind the partition in the room, a man stepped out. Well, long time no see. Though, the last time I saw you, it was through the glass at the police station, so I'm sure you don't remember me. No way. You're... Yes, I'm Dany, the kid you hit with a hardball, causing a serious injury. That's impossible. John jumped up from his chair, panic written all over his face. It's not a lie. Look, here's a copy of the indictment and the incident report from back then. We also have footage from a nearby security camera. Oh, and you remember skipping out on the damages you were supposed to pay? You ran off without paying, didn't you? Ugh. Did you know? When you evade paying damages, the statute of limitations is extended. So, you're still not off the hook. As Dany glared at him, John began to sweat profusely. We've also gathered testimonies from your old school friends about all the other bad things you've done. What do you think will happen if we take this to the police? No, this can't be happening. Fortunately, Dany had no lasting physical effects from his injury, though he mentioned that the old wounds still ached occasionally. I couldn't forgive John for what he did, so I mustered the courage to reach out to Dany. He expressed a desire to be involved, so I arranged for him to be here today. Emma had also been instrumental in gathering the complaint letters from the women. Over 50 letters were collected, showing just how much John had been getting away with. The fact that these women managed to write and deliver the letter of accusation in just one night shows how deeply they resented him. In a way, it was terrifying, and I felt a sudden chill down my spine. John was subsequently fired from the company. I also heard that several women had pressed charges, prompting a police investigation. At Emma's company, a new department dedicated to improving corporate compliance was established, and she was appointed as its head. She is now working tirelessly to create a better environment for women. Seeing her dedication, I found myself admiring her even more, and I knew I wanted to continue supporting her in any way I could. Afterward, Dany and I had a long conversation for the first time in years. Sorry for contacting you out of the blue, and thanks for your help today. I really appreciate it. No worries. I had a grudge against that guy too, so it worked out. Glad to hear that. We hadn't spoken much since the incident with John, but before that, we were as close as brothers, always hanging out together. Dany looked at me with a nostalgic smile before suddenly bowing his head. I've been meaning to apologize to you. What? It should be me apologizing to you. If I hadn't stood up to him, you wouldn't have been hurt. No, I was going to fight back too. But he threw that hardball at me before I could. So in a way, it was just bad luck that I got hurt. So, we both just mistakenly thought we were to blame? Yeah, looks like it. Dany transferred overseas when he entered middle school due to his parents' circumstances. We lost touch after that, but he says he has been worried about me all this time. I actually started a company in the US and made it pretty big. Now, I've opened a branch in Japan, and I'm running it as the CEO here. When did you become so successful? That's amazing. What are you talking about? You're the future CEO yourself. I've heard you've been developing new products left and right. Ugh, that's embarrassing. After reconnecting through this incident, we began keeping in touch again, just like old times, meeting up whenever we had the chance. Dany also offered to give me some rather strict personal coaching on how to say no, knowing how much I struggled with it. No, Jake. You need to be firm and say no there. Really? Even for something like this? Well, I'm not saying you have to be as blunt as an American, but your responses are way too vague. After you say no, explain why. It's that simple. If they still can't agree with you or end up disliking you, then that's the extent of the relationship. You don't need to please everyone. While considering others' feelings is a valued trait in Japan, overdoing it can stifle your individuality. What do you want to do? Who do you want to be? As the CEO, it's your job to bring that forward and make adjustments to achieve it. Yeah, you're right. Thanks, Dany. No problem. Leave it to me. It felt like we were back to how we used to be. Although, I guess our roles have kind of reversed now, but this dynamic isn't so bad. Eventually, I did become the CEO, and I'm living a happy life with Emma as my partner. Thanks to Dany's guidance, I've become much better at clearly saying yes or no in business. Still, the one person I just can't say no to is my wife, and that's a bit of a challenge. People often avoid saying no to prevent hurting others. We watch others' reactions, fear being disliked, and end up giving vague answers or agreeing to things we don't want, only to regret it later. But for the sake of protecting those who are important to me, I've decided to become the kind of person who can say no when something is wrong. I want to build relationships where we can truly understand and respect each other. That's the kind of person I strive to be. My daughter is in critical condition in Tokyo. A woman, unable to pass through the ticket gate, broke down crying at the station. I offered her my ticket. Please, take it. What? It was the ticket I needed to attend a very important wedding. The thought of what might happen if I were late was terrifying. But still, I wanted her to use it. Later, my boss, Ray, curious that I was late to the wedding, said something unbelievable. You embarrassed me. You're fired. I had angered the one person I couldn't afford to. Even though I regretted it, there was no undoing the situation. But even so, I don't think I made the wrong choice. I was able to help a family in need. And, in a way, I saved myself by making that choice. Alright, I got it. Talk to you later. I hung up the phone roughly and picked up the pace, trying to make up for lost time. I absolutely couldn't be late today. Sweating profusely, I continued to sprint through the station. My name is Michael, 28 years old. I'm about to board the bullet train to attend Ray's wedding. Of course, I can't afford to be late. That's why I left my hotel earlier than planned, just to be safe. Mom, you didn't have to call me today of all days. I got caught up in one of my mom's usual long phone calls at the worst possible time. The topic was too important to brush her off, so I couldn't just hang up. Trying to navigate an unfamiliar train system while on the phone, I ended up on the wrong line. And now I'm barely going to make it for the bullet train. Hey, watch it. Sorry, I'm in a hurry. I was running so fast, I didn't even have time to look around, which earned me a few glares from people passing by. Guess I should have at least listened to her. What a terrible son I am. I was the only one from my rural high school to get into Tokyo University. After graduation, I landed a job at a top company, was assigned to the prestigious sales department, and clung on for years. Barely surviving the harsh competition, and then I met him, just when I was finally starting to get recognized. Quite a journey from the countryside, huh? Must have been tough for you. Ray sneered as soon as he heard where I was from. He was born and raised in Tokyo, with study abroad experience during his school years. He held a key position at an overseas branch before being brought in with much fanfare as the new sales director. A true elite. I disliked him from that moment on. Hey, country boy. Get these documents in order. And make sure it's in standard language, got it? Hey, country boy, make some copies of this. I just have to ask, do you even know how to use a copier? Ray constantly called me country boy and made me do all sorts of menial tasks. Thanks to him, the promising days of my career came to an abrupt end. Before long, everyone around me only saw me as Ray's errand boy, and no matter how well I performed, I stopped getting any recognition. Amidst all this, Ray's marriage was announced. His fiancée was the daughter of an executive at one of our client companies, and you can imagine how smug he was. He generously invited everyone in the department to the wedding and reception. Michael, you better be there. I've got a special favor to ask. Sure. For once, Ray didn't call me country boy and instead used my name, smiling and in a particularly good mood. I had a bad feeling about it, and as it turned out, I was right. But having to go on a business trip out of town the day before the wedding. Could this be Ray's doing, too? With that suspicion, I finally spotted the ticket gate. I was cutting it close, but it looked like I was going to make the bullet train. Ha, ha. Oh, thank goodness. Relieved, I couldn't help but throw my fist in the air, not caring who saw. Ray personally asked me, give the speech on behalf of the subordinates. In other words, he wanted me to praise him to the skies in front of bride and her family, and make sure everyone knows what a great boss he is. And there was one more favor Ray had asked of me. So, I'm supposed to wear this? In front of over 100 people. I peeked into the paper bag I was carrying and couldn't help but grimace. Inside was a flashy, revealing outfit meant for a woman. Wearing this, I'm supposed to perform at the wedding reception. A dance with ridiculous movements, almost like an octopus. I didn't want to go. Maybe if I missed the bullet train. But if I canceled at the last minute, who knows what kind of wrath I'd face later. Resolving myself, I headed briskly toward the ticket gate. And then it happened. Ha! My heart skipped a beat, and I stopped in my tracks. There, in front of the gate, someone was crouched down. Her back was trembling, and every now and then, a faint sob escaped. Mom? No way. I was just talking to her on the phone from home. But something about that figure made me approach her cautiously, as if I were drawn to it. The resemblance to my mother was uncanny. Step by step, I inched closer. As I spoke up. Oh. I felt my face flush as I quickly averted my gaze. The woman who looked up at me was a complete stranger, not my mother at all. What? Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you were someone else. I hastily apologized to the confused woman, trying to cover my embarrassment. And then, I hastily tried to rush through the ticket gate with a quick sorry, but my feet wouldn't move, as if they were stuck to the floor. Excuse me, are you okay? Ha! I couldn't help but ask. Her eyes were swollen and red, as if she'd been crying for who knows how long, and her shirt collar was soaked with tears. What kind of pain had she been through? Maybe it was because she reminded me of my mom from behind. If I just walked away, I felt like I wouldn't be able to face my mother, so I offered my hand to the woman. For now, let's move over there. It's not safe here. Okay. I helped her to her feet and guided her to a corner where no one was passing by. Even as we moved, she continued to cry. My daughter, she's in critical condition. When I asked what was wrong, she was so distraught that she could barely speak. She finally managed to force out those few words before collapsing in tears again. Your daughter. The hospital just called. I need to get to Tokyo, fast. Through her sobs, she struggled to explain. Summarizing the parts I could barely make out, it goes like this. The daughter of a woman living in Tokyo was taken to the hospital after an accident. The hospital had just informed her that her daughter's condition had worsened, so she rushed to the station to catch the next bullet train to Tokyo. But then, my wallet. I left it at the hotel. What? You forgot your wallet at the hotel? No way. Sorry, Chloe. I'm so sorry. Chloe, her daughter's name, no doubt. The woman is crying out repeatedly, Chloe, Chloe. Her voice was heart-wrenching. I fell silent. In my suit pocket was my ticket to Tokyo. As I felt it there, a thought crossed my mind. Maybe this ticket was here for a reason. Please, use this. What? The woman looked at me in confusion as I handed her the ticket. I gently forced it into her hand and then reached back into my pocket. Following my mother's advice, I had tucked away a few bills just in case. Take this too, just in case. For a cab or something. Wait, I can't. The train's leaving any minute. I urged her towards the ticket gate, gently pushing her along. She turned back to look at me several times, and finally, she bowed deeply. Thank you so much. Go on, hurry. Really, thank you. She called out her thanks one last time before disappearing through the gate. Watching her go, I felt a sense of clarity and satisfaction wash over me. Ha! I guess I'm not so bad after all. Ray had looked down on me for so long that I had completely lost my confidence. But being able to help someone in a moment like that, maybe I wasn't so hopeless. If she gets to see her daughter, the cost of another ticket is a small price to pay. Ticket. Oh, right, I need to get another one. Suddenly realizing this, I rushed to the ticket machine. The current train had already left, but another would be arriving in about an hour. I'd be a little late for the wedding, but that was better than not showing up at all. Thank goodness, there are still seats available. I started the process at the ticket machine and reached for my wallet to pay, only to realize, my wallet was gone. I searched my bag, my pockets, and even the paper bag with the outfit for the performance. But it was nowhere to be found. Oh no! I suddenly remembered that I had left it on the table. Just like that woman, I had also forgotten my wallet at the hotel. This is bad. Panicking, I rushed back to the hotel. But since I had already checked out, my wallet had been collected as a lost item. It took quite a bit of time to prove that it was mine and to retrieve it. On top of that, the money in my wallet wasn't enough to buy another ticket, so I had to waste more time withdrawing cash from an ATM. By the time I finally boarded the next bullet train. You really know how to embarrass someone, don't you? Ray, in his tuxedo, glared at me with a piercing gaze. I had missed the wedding entirely and arrived at the reception hours late. I'm so sorry, the speech. Someone else did it. It was last minute, so it was a mess. Let me at least do the performance. Forget it. Just wait until I get back from my honeymoon, you'll see. With that, he stormed off, leaving me utterly dejected. And later, when Ray returned from his honeymoon, I was called into his office and harshly reprimanded. People who can't keep their promises are trash, unfit for the workplace. Are you even sorry? I'm truly sorry. You're fired. What? Thinking I must have misheard, I instinctively asked for clarification. But that only fueled Ray's anger further. What do you mean? What? You haven't shown a hint of remorse this whole time. No, that's not it. I don't even want to see your face anymore. Watch me. I'll find a way to fire a country bumpkin like you, for whatever reason I want. You humiliated someone like me. This can't be happening. Soon enough, I realized he meant every word. A termination notice arrived, citing neglect of duties, something I was completely innocent of. As he handed me the notice, Ray gave a sinister smile. Make sure you do a better job at your next place. I fell silent. And so, I left the company I had worked at for 6 years. After that, Ray told me, there's no work left for someone who's leaving, and I was practically forced to leave early that day. Ow. With slumped shoulders and heavy steps, I walked out of the office. Even if I tried to protest my innocence, everyone sided with the accomplished Ray. It was pathetic that I couldn't even muster a defense, knowing my words would likely fall on deaf ears. Was I always such a coward? Maybe it's time to go home. Just as I thought of my mother back home, it happened. Excuse me. A woman's voice suddenly called out to me. I turned around to find a woman in her 50s, with an air of elegance, standing in front of the company. Are you? Oh, I knew it. Thank you so much for your help the other day. I suddenly recognized the woman and let out an "oh" as I realized who she was. She looked like a completely different person now, with a bright and sunny smile. She was the woman I had given my bullet train ticket to at the station. Oh, I'm glad I found the right company. But, how did you know it was here? It's the logo. I happen to be familiar with these things, she said with a graceful smile, pointing to her collar. On my suit, I always wore the company pin with the company logo, even on the day of Ray's wedding. Somehow, she had remembered the detail despite everything that happened. It's a habit of mine, given my line of work. But thanks to that, I was able to find you and return this. Here's the money for the ticket and the cash you lent me. I'm sorry it took so long to repay you. With a gentle smile, she handed me an envelope. After I took it, she stepped back and bowed deeply. Thank you so much. Because of you, I was able to see my daughter. Oh. Her eyes were slightly teary as she raised her head. I hesitated for a moment. Should I ask what happened next? I worried that her daughter might not have. But it seemed she understood my concern. She smiled and nodded deeply. She pulled through. The surgery was successful, and she's on the road to recovery. Really? That's That's wonderful. Yes. Ah, thank goodness. As the tension left me, my legs suddenly gave out, and I collapsed weakly to the ground. I'm sorry, I haven't introduced myself. My name is Tiffany, she said as she helped me back to my feet, finally introducing herself. When I told her my name, she looked at me with a slightly apologetic expression. May I ask one more favor of you? Would you mind coming with me to visit my daughter's hospital room, Michael? Oh, sure. At Tiffany's request, I visited the hospital where her daughter, Chloe, was admitted. She had insisted that her daughter wanted to thank me in person, even though I said it wasn't necessary. But in the end, I couldn't refuse Tiffany's request. Excuse me. I stepped into the hospital room, feeling nervous. The moment I saw her, I couldn't help but catch my breath. Oh, Mom. You're here earlier than usual today. She was probably in her early 20s, a few years younger than me. Her features were so delicate and well-formed that she could have passed for either a high school student or an adult. She turned her large, expressive eyes toward Tiffany, moving her perfectly shaped lips. Despite the bandages that covered much of her body, her beauty was striking, almost radiant, as she lay in the hospital bed. Hey, who's that with you? I was speechless. Her sudden gaze caught me off guard, making my heart skip a beat. Tiffany gently chided her, saying, "That's not very polite," and introduced me to her daughter. "This is Michael, the one who gave me the bullet train ticket." "Chloe, he's your benefactor." "What?" I was taken aback by her words, not expecting such a title. Chloe's large eyes widened even further. Then, she slowly sat up and bowed deeply to me. "I'm so sorry for my appearance. Thank you so much for what you did." "No, really, it was nothing." Her gratitude was so sincere and polite that it made me feel even more embarrassed. The contrast between her current demeanor and the playful tone she had earlier was striking. And it made my heart skip a beat once again. When my heart was about to stop, my mother rushed in and held my hand. At that moment, my heart rate suddenly started to increase. The doctor told me about it after I woke up. If my mother hadn't made it in time, I might not be here now. So, because you gave her that ticket, you saved my life. Thank you, truly. Tiffany also bowed deeply to me again. Sometimes, people experience things that can't be explained by logic alone. Like Chloe, who, despite being unconscious, somehow sensed her mother's presence and found the strength to survive. I really didn't do much. Well, I'll be going now. Before they could lift their heads, I quickly headed out into the hallway. Otherwise, I might have started crying right there in front of these two women I had just met. It was the bond between Chloe and Tiffany that had created such a miraculous outcome. But it seemed that I had been able to help, even just a little. Even though helping them had led to me losing my job. I didn't regret my decision, so it felt like they were telling me I had done the right thing. And that thought brought a surge of tears to my eyes. Michael. Before I knew it, Tiffany was standing beside me, gently rubbing my back as I cried. Her touch was so similar to how my mother would comfort me when I was a tearful child, right down to the warmth of her hand. Did something happen? If you don't mind, would you like to talk about it? There was something in Tiffany's words that made me instinctively nod. Maybe, deep down, I had wanted someone to listen all along. We moved to the hospital's lounge, where I shared what had happened after I left the station. How I realized I had also forgotten my wallet. How I ended up being terribly late to Ray's wedding. and how that led to Ray's anger and my eventual firing from the company. As my story unfolded, Tiffany's expression grew increasingly somber. "Oh my. Then I really caused you so much trouble." "No, no. It was my own fault. If only I had double-checked for my wallet before leaving the hotel. If only I hadn't left my wallet out the night before. If only I had put a little extra cash in my wallet, just in case." There were so many things I could have done differently, but thinking about them now was pointless. It's fine. Honestly, I didn't really feel comfortable at that company anyway. Is that so? Yeah, ever since the new boss took over. So maybe it was a good opportunity. I plan to use up my remaining vacation days and then leave the company for good. I had braced myself for an immediate dismissal, so it was surprising that they were allowing me to finish this way. Apparently, even Ray had some reservations about firing me under false pretenses. I've been so busy all these years, so I think I'll just take it easy for a while. Not that I really have any hobbies or anything. Well, Tiffany still looked a bit apologetic, but then she smiled warmly and said, "You've worked hard. I'm sure you'll find a new job soon, Michael." "I hope so. I really do." "Yes, I'm sure of it." I wasn't entirely at peace yet, but Tiffany's encouragement made me feel a bit more optimistic. "And, if it's not too much to ask, would you be willing to visit my daughter from time to time?" What? I almost choked on my coffee. Did she mean? I'm often busy with work and can't visit her as much as I'd like. If you have some free time, I'd appreciate it if you could check in on her. I know it's a lot to ask. Oh. I see, of course. I felt embarrassed for a moment, thinking that maybe Chloe had wanted to see me. To hide my embarrassment, I nodded eagerly. Absolutely. This is some kind of fate, so I'd be happy to. Oh, thank you. I'm sure Chloe will be delighted. Really? Well, if that's the case, I'm happy too. Honestly, it's quite. I decided to keep these feelings hidden from Tiffany. During my time off, I would end up visiting Chloe's hospital room every day. That Ray guy sounds awful. You were working at a real toxic workplace, Michael. Toxic workplace. Well, we didn't have holidays or anything, so maybe. Getting fired was probably the best thing that could have happened. I know it's not my place to say, but haha, yeah, you're probably right. It's more of a relief, really. Chloe and I quickly became close after I started visiting her in the hospital. It was thanks to her cheerful personality and gift for conversation. I've always been awkward in social situations, but with her, I found myself opening up effortlessly. Maybe, just maybe. Michael? Ha! Suddenly, Chloe leaned in close, her elegant face just inches from mine. Lately, I couldn't stop thinking about her, even when I was at home. Being this close to her now, my heart might stop. What? Oh. Sorry, that was insensitive of me. It's okay, I didn't hear anything, though I guess my heart did almost stop once. So you did hear. Chloe laughed brightly. In any case, I was just glad she was getting better. If she weren't, we wouldn't be having these conversations. Well, it's almost time for your checkup. I guess I should be going. As I stood up to leave, Chloe suddenly grabbed my arm. Wait. Chloe? Michael, thank you, really. It's okay. Both Tiffany and you have already conveyed your feelings to me. It's not just that. There are other reasons I'm glad I got to meet you, Michael. She then began to tell me about her past. When Chloe was a child, her parents divorced. Tiffany worked extremely hard to raise her, and she was very strict as a mother. She didn't want us to be looked down on just because we were a single-parent family. I understand her feelings now, but back then, all I could do was rebel and say, "You're never even home." Feeling lonely from not spending time with her mother and frustrated by her strictness, Chloe started acting out. From the way she is now, it's hard to believe, but Chloe told me that until just a few years ago, she and her mother barely spoke. I love my mom now. But I didn't realize just how much she loved me until she rushed to my side on that bullet train. It's because of you, Michael, that I got to know that. So, thank you. You must be such a wonderful son for your parents. Your parents must be so proud of you. She smiled at me as she said this. But I fell silent. Michael? Is something wrong? I don't have a father either. He passed away when I was little. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. And I'm not a wonderful son at all. What do you mean? Like Chloe, I was also raised by a single mother. My mother was always busy, so I spent most of my childhood alone at home. To distract myself from the loneliness and to avoid worrying my mother, I threw myself into my studies. As a result, my grades soared. Michael, you're a genius. Getting into Tokyo University someday isn't just a dream. You can do it. I used to brush off my mother's words as just typical parental pride, but I never imagined that I would actually get accepted a few years later. The way my mother celebrated when I got in. It's amazing. I knew you were a genius, Michael. Hooray! She was like a child, bragging to everyone she met. I felt proud of myself too, for making her so happy. But I was just a big fish in a small pond. When I entered the workforce, I realized that there were so many people better than me. Having a degree from Tokyo University didn't give me any advantage there. Colleagues with less impressive academic backgrounds quickly outpaced me in performance and promotions. I was ridiculed as a country bumpkin and forced to kiss up to a boss I couldn't stand. And in the end, I haven't told my mother I got fired. I don't want to worry her. I can't bear to shatter her belief that her son is the town's top elite. Michael, the reason I clung to a job I hated, even when I wanted to quit, it was because I was terrified of disappointing my mother. Even though I'm no longer the person she expects me to be. Are you eating well, Michael? Make sure you're getting enough sleep at night. Try to get outside for some exercise sometimes. I know you're working hard, but my mother's frequent calls were always about her concerns for me. Oh, and just then, my phone started ringing again. It is another call from my mother. I couldn't bring myself to answer it, so I tapped the ignore button. I'll call her back later. I'm in a hospital, after all. The truth is, I've done this several times already. I just can't face her calls. I'm too afraid that my lies will be exposed. Ha ha. Maybe I should just block her number. Just kidding. Michael. Chloe's voice snapped me out of my thoughts. I realized how terrible my thoughts had become. Seeing my distress, Chloe firmly grasped my trembling hand. I have somewhere I want to go after I'm discharged. Will you take me there? There was a certain intensity in her eyes as she asked me this. Overwhelmed, I could only nod and say, okay. And so, about a month later, Chloe recovered with a speed that surprised even the doctors, and she was eventually discharged. To aid in her rehabilitation, we decided to take a trip together. I can't believe Tiffany let us go on a trip, just the two of us. Of course, it's because she trusts you, Michael. Should I be happy about that? But the destination, well, the place Chloe wanted to visit. It was none other than my hometown. I've always imagined it must be a beautiful place. And it really is, just as I thought. The scenery is gorgeous, and the air is so fresh. Well, that's about all there is here. But I'm glad you're enjoying it. We walked slowly along the familiar paths of my hometown, matching Chloe's pace as she used her crutches. Now that she mentioned it, the scenery and air really were beautiful. When I lived here, I never thought this rural place had anything of value. Chloe, are you okay? We're almost at my parents' house. I'm fine. I'm so excited to meet your mom. I fell silent. I couldn't even remember the last time I visited home. What would I say to my mother when I saw her? No, did I even deserve to face her? After a few minutes of walking, lost in thought, we finally arrived at my mother's house, where she was waiting. Oh my! As soon as our eyes met, my mother and I both let out a surprised exclamation. She had been tending to the garden outside, but as soon as she saw us, she dropped her trowel and rushed over. Not to me, but to Chloe. Oh dear, what happened to you? You're hurt. Yes, I had a little accident, but I'm okay now. Oh, you poor thing. Come, sit down. You need to rest. Thank you so much. I didn't say anything. My mother beckoned Chloe and had her sit on the porch. She seemed to have no regard for her son, serving tea and offering snacks solely to Chloe. She had always loved hosting guests, and that part of her hadn't changed at all. But she did seem a bit thinner. Then, she turned to me with a mischievous smile. Michael, why didn't you tell me you were bringing such a lovely girlfriend? You should have warned me. Girlfriend? No, she's not. Yes, I'm Michael's girlfriend. It's a pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Smith. Chloe. To my shock, Chloe played along with my mother's misunderstanding. From that point on, my chatty mother and Chloe hit it off, talking nonstop on the porch until the sun began to set. Michael really saved me. He's a true lifesaver to me. My Michael did that? He's always been such a kind boy. And so smart, too. He was always top of his class. How many times are you going to tell the same stories, especially you, Mom? I tried to cut in, exasperated, but my mother wouldn't stop. He's still the only one from this town who got into Tokyo University, you know. Michael is my pride and joy. And he got a job at such a prestigious company in Tokyo. They even run commercials on TV here. Mom, that's enough. The only reason her bragging didn't sound like boasting was because of how genuinely happy she looked as she spoke. But I couldn't stand it anymore. After all, I had already quit that job long ago. And to top it all off, I was fired. Mom, actually. What is it, Michael? I need to tell you something. I mustered the courage to tell her the truth. But just as I was about to speak. That's right. What? Chloe? Michael works at a well-known, prestigious company. He's really amazing, and I respect him so much. Oh my, is that so? Yes. I was speechless. Chloe's words made my mother even more ecstatic. She was so happy that she ordered the best sushi delivery for dinner, saying it was because I was working so hard. Don't overdo it, Michael. Make sure you're eating well, getting enough sleep, and exercising sometimes. Yeah. I ate the sushi mechanically, barely tasting it. After dinner, I practically fled from the house. Your mom is wonderful. She's so kind, just like you, Michael. On the bus heading to the station, Chloe kept praising my mother. She even joked about becoming a part of my family. But I was too overwhelmed to react. Why did you come to my home, Chloe? Because I wanted to meet your mom. And what did you plan to do once you met her? Did you come just to lie? I didn't realize it, but my tone had become almost accusatory. Instead of getting upset or hurt, Chloe paused for a moment, then quietly said, I'm sorry. My mom and I have been hiding something from you, Michael. What? Both you and Tiffany? Yes. Chloe nodded and opened her bag. She pulled out a small silver case and handed me one of the business cards inside. Everything you need to know was on there. CEO. What? Tiffany. That's my mom's card. And this one is mine. Chloe handed me another business card. It read Executive Vice President, Chloe. And underneath that was the name of a major apparel company that had grown rapidly in recent years. Is this for real, Chloe? It's the company my mom started when I was a child. It's still growing, but we focus a lot on employee benefits. Our salaries are among the best in the industry, and the bonuses are substantial. Wait a minute. I'm sorry, I can't keep up with this. In one fell swoop, I had learned about the true identities of Chloe and Tiffany, and their company, which rivaled even my former workplace. I was in complete shock, trying to process it all. Then Chloe made an even more unexpected offer. Michael, how would you like to work at our company? What? What? My mom just sent me a message saying, as long as Michael agrees, he can start whenever he's ready. Take your time to think about it. We'll wait for your answer. I was speechless. I was left completely stunned. The surprises Chloe had dropped on me today had completely floored me. Chloe, meanwhile, had turned her gaze to the passing scenery outside the bus window. Her reflection in the glass looked oddly melancholic. There were a lot of sad things that happened before the company grew to its current size. For both my mom and me. What do you mean? We were betrayed by people we trusted, mocked behind our backs. That's why in our family, there's an unspoken rule. Don't trust others too easily. No way. That's so sad. When I blurted out these words, Chloe gave a faint smile and said, Yes, it is. But, after meeting you, my mom and I realized something. There are people in this world, like you, who help others without expecting anything in return. That's why I want to try trusting people again. It's still a little scary, but I know I can trust you, Michael. That's why I want you to work with us. Without me realizing it, Chloe had taken my hand, looking at me with earnest eyes. And just so you know, I didn't lie to your mother. What? She knew. She knew you had quit your job. Wait, what? It was when I had stepped out to use the restroom. My mother suddenly asked Chloe, Hasn't Michael left his job? How did you know, Mrs. Smith? I can tell he is hiding something by how he acted. It's just a feeling you get when your child is hiding something. Saying that, my mother laughed heartily. But then, her expression suddenly turned somber, with her eyebrows drooping in sadness. It's my fault. I got so excited about his achievements that he probably feels like he can't let me down. It's his way of being kind to me. I've put too much pressure on him. Could you tell him for me, Chloe? That it doesn't matter if he works at a prestigious company or not. That he's my pride and joy just for growing up to be who he is. That he's my one and only son, and I'm proud of him no matter what. She said, just stay healthy, and it's enough if you occasionally pick up the phone. I'm sorry for all the pain I've caused you. Your mother knew everything, didn't she? Ha ha. How does she always know? I tried to laugh it off, but tears started streaming down my face. Chloe gently wiped them away with her handkerchief. Do you want to go back and talk to her? There's still time. No. I'll talk to her once I've settled into a new job. When I'm ready, I'll go back home and have that conversation. When I said this, Chloe's expression brightened instantly. Now I want to go see my mom too. I really want to stay her daughter. When we get back to Tokyo, let's go visit her. I have something I want to tell her as well. Okay. Chloe nodded happily, just as the bus arrived at the station. Before boarding the bullet train, I turned to Chloe and expressed my gratitude. Thank you for bringing me here. After that, I started working as a salesperson at the company run by Chloe and Tiffany. As it turned out, both Chloe and Tiffany were surprisingly tough bosses, and they pushed me hard. My sales skills improved significantly under their guidance. I made new friends among my colleagues and enjoyed my new life. But then, out of the blue. Well, isn't it you, Michael? I thought you'd gone back to the countryside, but I see you're still clinging to Tokyo. Ray. The person who showed up as the representative for a business negotiation was none other than my former boss, Ray. He still had that condescending attitude, looking down on me like I was a country bumpkin. So, I decided to play along. That's right. I just couldn't leave Tokyo behind, so I'm doing my best to stick around. Haha, I see. I guess the big city is too exciting for someone from the sticks. But you sure are aiming too high, aren't you? Aiming high, you say? Yeah. You probably applied on a whim and somehow got lucky enough to be hired. But isn't it a bit of a stretch for a country bumpkin to work at an apparel company? I bet you don't even understand the latest trends. Exactly. I have no idea what people are talking about half the time. Ha ha ha. I figured as much. You must be a real burden to them, just like you were back at our old place, huh? Absolutely. And since I don't appreciate the value of your company, I'll have to decline your offer. I said this with my best sales smile, and Ray's face went slack with shock. After countless negotiations, he finally secured the deal. But to have ruined this hard-earned opportunity by insulting the client. How will he report this to the company? Of course, I had no way of knowing. Chloe, my mom wants to know if you've decided on the day you'll visit next time. When I relayed my mother's message, Chloe quickly flipped through her planner. Hold on, let me check for an open day. Actually, even if I'm not free, I'll make time for her. You still adore my mom, don't you, Chloe? I chuckled, and she smiled brightly. Of course. Just then, another message came from my mother. I read it and was left speechless. She says she'll congratulate us when we see her. Wait, how does she? For some reason, Chloe responded to me with confidence. Her words carried an odd sense of conviction. She's your mom. She knows everything. Ha ha. Makes sense. We had planned to announce our engagement as a surprise, but apparently, my mom was already in on it. I realized I still had a lot to learn if I ever wanted to outsmart her. She's probably going to prepare a feast, isn't she? Yeah, I'd better call her and make sure she doesn't overdo it. Maybe, for once, I'll make the call first. When I added this, Chloe nodded happily. I need to start preparing too, for your mom's birthday party. It's that time of year already. Of course, I'll help. Let's both do our best to make our parents happy. Chloe and I exchanged smiles, understanding each other perfectly in that moment. Just because we're family doesn't mean we always understand each other without words. There were times I was frustrated with my mom, thinking, why doesn't she get it? And there were times when I failed to understand her feelings. But now, I realize that my mom has always cared about me deeply. As long as you're living well, that's enough for me, she would say. When I finally understood that, I realized just how much I had been loved all along. I've received so much love that I'm not sure I can ever repay it all. But from now on, little by little, together with the person I cherish, I want to start sharing my feelings with my mother too.